I'm not even going to give you a choice about the language. I'm sorry. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very glad to be part of the CIS conference once again, where we discuss really important subject matters, ideas that have an impact on the banking system as a whole. But before I go further, I wanted to, first of all, express how pleased I am to see the appointment of Mr. Smali as the governor of National Bank of Ukraine. I am actually coming from his first conference where he briefly outlined his vision for the future, and he's definitely the man with the right character, the right competence, and the right focus on the job to lead the sector to the new frontiers and face the challenges that we do. Now, taking from there, we have issues with our banking system in that it is not provided with a clement, conducive business climate with the right incentives to fulfill its functions fully and effectively. And one of the main impediments in this regard, and it's the subject matter of today's discussion, part of the discussion, is the burden of non-productive loans, which in particular at state-owned banks, handicap operations, profitability, and capital adequacy level. And through that transmission, their ability to become efficient and effective players in the system. The same also applies to privately owned banks, but thank God to a much lesser extent. We, of course, cannot afford this to continue if we want our banking system to be the driver of our economic growth and become truly an attractive investment sector, and a profitable one at that. I'm therefore pleased to see that this important subject of NPLs is included in this conference today. This is also because I am somewhat frustrated, personally, that despite a lot of effort, time, and money that has gone into devising and making operational the out-of-court settlement system, the Kiev initiative, that it is so far not finding the right amount of traction that I had hoped for. Just as one cannot argue with success, one cannot excuse the failure. And I would have to be honest in saying that the broader system has so far failed to address the NPL issue in an effective and, most importantly, conclusive manner. And there are a few consequences of this. When we talk about commercialization and eventual privatization of state-owned banks, we have to realize that the path to that objective goes through the resolution of this NPL issue on their books. In the very same vein, the much discussed additional capital requirements of these banks relate to the full recognition and provisioning needs of NPLs, which continue, therefore, to drain public financial resources. It is not surprising. We all know from experience that the longer an NPL remains unaddressed, unrestructured, the less and lower levels, if at all, of recovery is possible. And therefore, there is an urgent need to address this problem in a rigorous way, particularly for state-owned banks where the concentration of NPLs is extremely high. There are many issues which need to be addressed to be able to comprehensively address the NPL problem. They include a coherent and comprehensive regulatory, tax, and legislative set of measures, and also deployment of new capital and know-how, be it through asset management companies, or be it through specialized divisions that are managed separately and governed separately as internal divisions within the banks. The benefit of allowing an asset management company is really to be able to see the best international practice and to be able to benchmark internal performance, deploy new capital, freeing of management time, and reducing, most importantly, any room for corruption. They would also be able to send the message in the strongest form to those who can pay but choose not to pay that their time is up. There's a new sheriff in town. I think the tax, the financial, and also to a very important extent the prosecutors' authorities, the prosecution authorities, and the regulator once more need to focus on this issue. We need to try to eliminate the damage the continuation of the situation causes to Ukraine's economic development, because, as I said, it impedes an effective functioning of the financial system. Most strikingly for me, and maybe I should have been used to it from the Turkish experience, that state-owned banks managers are constrained by archaic understanding, or rather lack thereof, of the present-day economic and financial concepts and realities on the part of some of the authorities that I had just mentioned. SOB managers are somewhat paralyzed by the justified concern of being potentially dragged before the courts by some overzealous and clearly under-informed, educated or otherwise, and sometimes even corrupted prosecutor at some point in time, if they were to try properly to restructure MPLs, not to mention, of course, and God forbid, a write-off of a portion of the outstanding MPL. I'm trying to point out here that all these, in all my comments, that you need a complete set of measures to address this issue. By way of example, we at EBRD, apart from supporting the Kiev approach, we are also supporting, and through legislation and drafting and training, the private bailiff service at the Ministry of Justice, under the Ministry of Justice's auspices. And I believe this will go a long way towards addressing some of the challenges in the enforcement of creditors' rights. Of course, this has to be coupled with an effective and uncorrupted judicial system that sometimes we complain about. You can see that the subject matter of MPL resolution is a special place in my heart because I feel that I really learned to become a good banker when almost 30 years ago I was appointed as the restructuring manager in my previous employer, Royal Bank of Canada, and we called it special loans at the time. But indeed, it needs a special attention, expert and dedicated attention to successfully address that issue. I would try to conclude by saying that it has to be realized that it's in the interest of everyone to be forward-looking and not to be hamshackled by the past. Trust has to be restored in the strained relationships through the MPL situations to allow good faith negotiations and mutually satisfactory resolutions of these MPLs. I call on all the bankers here, including definitely the private banks, to give the Kiev approach a chance, a push to tackle this issue. I'll stop here. I'll thank you for your attention and wish you a very successful conference today. Thank you.